The room had been quiet for nearly an hour, cameras rolling, reporters typing, officials standing against the walls with carefully neutral expressions while the president delivered remarks on trade, manufacturing, and the future of the North American economy. Behind him, the flags of the United States and Canada stood side by side, a symbol of a partnership that had survived wars, recessions, and generations of leadership changes. And then, in a single moment, the atmosphere changed completely. The president looked directly into the camera and accused Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney of being a liar. Not once, 5 times. The accusation was not framed as a misunderstanding. It was not softened as a policy disagreement. It was direct, personal, and unlike anything heard in a diplomatic setting between two of the closest allies on Earth. Reporters inside the room later said they stopped typing and simply looked up. Some exchanged glances. Even veteran correspondents who had spent decades covering the White House admitted privately that the language felt extraordinary. And while those words were being delivered live in Washington, they were also being watched live in Ottawa. This is the Global Report. Tonight, we take you inside one of the most remarkable diplomatic confrontations in modern North American history. Before we continue, we want to hear from you. Do you believe political leaders should avoid personal attacks when discussing allied nations? Or has modern politics changed those expectations entirely? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Tell us where you are writing from. We read every response. Within minutes, the exchange became the dominant political story across North America. Networks interrupted scheduled programming. International broadcasters replayed the clip on a loop. Social media platforms exploded with reactions from diplomats, economists, journalists, and ordinary viewers trying to process what they had just witnessed. At the center of it was a single serious charge. The president argued that Carney had deliberately distorted trade data to strengthen Canada's negotiating position, an accusation that implied intentional deception by the leader of one of America's closest partners. But as analysts began examining the numbers, a critical detail emerged almost immediately. The statistics Carney had cited in earlier public statements had not come from Canadian agencies. They had not come from outside consultants. They came directly from the United States government itself. The figures were drawn from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the United States International Trade Commission, and the Department of Commerce. In other words, the numbers that had just been called lies were published by American institutions, funded by American taxpayers, operating under the authority of the American government. That single discovery changed the entire nature of the controversy. Diplomatic officials across Europe and Asia reacted with unusual speed. Former ambassadors described the confrontation as deeply damaging to the norms governing communication between allied democracies. In Paris, senior officials called the language troubling. In Berlin, commentators questioned what such rhetoric might mean for future negotiations. Japanese analysts warned of wider consequences for trust between governments that depend on stable diplomatic communication. What had begun as a single exchange inside a briefing room was rapidly becoming an international crisis. Most observers expected the Canadian response to be lengthy and technical. Commentators predicted a detailed press conference with charts, economists, and pages of official documentation. The assumption in newsrooms across the world was that Ottawa would respond with overwhelming force and maximum detail. Instead, Mark Carney chose a completely different strategy. Sources close to the Canadian government revealed that communications advisors had prepared a full response package, multiple pages of supporting evidence, carefully verified talking points, ready for immediate delivery. By all accounts, it was thorough, fact-checked, and complete. Carney reviewed the material and rejected it. He reportedly told advisors that if it took 15 minutes to prove he was telling the truth, then the argument was already being lost. Within hours, the Prime Minister's office announced a short televised statement from Ottawa. The room was packed with journalists from around the world. Canadian broadcasters carried it live. American networks joined the feed within seconds. International outlets prepared translators and analysis panels, expecting a forceful rebuttal. Instead, viewers watched Carney walk calmly to the podium, carrying only a single sheet of paper. No graphics, no charts, no panel of experts. The setting was almost understated given the intensity of the political storm surrounding it. He began by calmly repeating the accusation. He stated clearly that the President of the United States had called him a liar earlier that day. He then explained precisely what the disagreement involved. The numbers he had cited regarding trade balances, energy integration, and supply chains came from official American government reports released within the previous 90 days. Holding up the single sheet of paper, he identified the sources one by one. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, the International Trade Commission, the Department of Commerce. He spoke slowly, carefully, without visible anger. Then came the line that transformed the moment into something far larger than a political dispute. Carney said there were only two possibilities. Either the president had not read the data produced by his own government before making the accusation, or he had read the data and accused him anyway. Neither possibility reflected well on the White House. Then, after a brief pause that television producers would later replay frame by frame, Carney delivered 5 words. The word he is looking for is mirror. The entire statement lasted roughly 30 seconds. Inside newsrooms, producers reportedly began shouting for replay clips before Carney had even left the podium. Commentators who had prepared for a long economic debate suddenly found themselves analyzing one short sentence. Within an hour, the clip was trending globally. Translation accounts rendered the word mirror into dozens of languages. The question everyone was asking was the same. How had 30 seconds managed to shift the entire weight of the confrontation back onto the White House? We want to ask you the same question. Do you think shorter, more focused responses are now more powerful in modern media than long political speeches? Or do detail and evidence still matter more in the end? Tell us in the comments below. Part of the answer lies in the structure of what Carney did. He never raised his voice. He never insulted the president directly. He did not try to overwhelm viewers with data. Instead, he used simplicity as a strategic instrument. He narrowed the entire argument to one sheet of paper and one central question. And by doing that, he forced the audience to focus on credibility rather than emotion. Communication experts observed that most leaders make the mistake of trying to answer every accusation at once. Carney answered only the one that mattered most. The White House now faced a problem with no clean exit. At the next press briefing, reporters immediately asked whether the administration disputed trade figures published by its own agencies. Every possible answer carried consequences. Rejecting the data risked undermining confidence in American government institutions. Accepting the data made the original accusation appear baseless. Television footage from that briefing showed visible tension as reporters pressed for clarification that never came. Political strategists from both parties acknowledged what had happened. Several Republican advisors, speaking anonymously, reportedly admitted that the administration had been caught off guard by the simplicity of the response. One described it as a communications trap with no easy exit. The public reaction reinforced that assessment. Polling in the days that followed suggested viewers saw Carney's response as calm, credible, and disciplined. Independent voters in particular responded to the use of official American data. Younger audiences shared the clip extensively, drawn to the contrast between emotional accusation and measured rebuttal. In a media environment defined by noise and constant information overload, brevity itself had become memorable. Diplomats, however, saw something beyond the media strategy. Their concern was about long-term trust. Canada and the United States share one of the most integrated economic relationships in the world. Supply chains cross the border daily. Energy systems are deeply connected. Military cooperation spans generations. Because of that history, public accusations between leaders carry weight far beyond domestic politics. Former officials warned that once personal distrust enters the relationship publicly, repairing it can take years. The international response moved quickly and in one direction. The European Union's foreign policy chief expressed concern about the tone of bilateral exchanges between allied nations, but did not criticize Carney. The omission was the message. What you do not condemn, you tacitly endorse. And the broader debate that followed went far beyond trade data. It became a question about two different styles of power. One that relies on volume, repetition, and force, and one that relies on restraint, precision, and the quiet confidence of someone who already knows the answer before they walk into the room. Viewers around the world watch those two approaches collide in real time, and they reach their own conclusions. In the days since, one image has remained fixed in public memory: a White House accusation delivered with visible intensity, followed by a calm 30-second response built around official American data and one word that traveled across every language and every platform on Earth. In today's media landscape, volume alone does not guarantee persuasion. Repetition does not automatically create credibility. And sometimes the statement that carries the greatest impact is not the longest speech in the room. It is the shortest response delivered with precision by someone who had nothing left to prove. If this kind of analysis is what you have been looking for, subscribe to the Global Report right now and hit the bell icon. We publish twice a week. We go further than the headlines every single time. You will not want to miss what comes next. This is the Global Report, the story behind the story. Every time,